Uh, for the third question regarding the Obama speech and the debate about what's the influence, and if the President Obama said that, we do believe that when President of the United States says something like that, should be not an empty should be actually choices in the pocket of the United States because this should be translation in some legal and political actions after when President Obama said that Bashar al-Assad has to leave. Basically, with the role of the United States at the Security Council, with the role with other regional powers, and this is why we do believe that something will help the international community to do more actions on Syria. In the second question about the Alawites and Iran, we should understand that the Alawite community in Syria are secular. They are not conservative like we see in the Shia. They are actually branched from the Shia, but they're quite different. And the Alawite, they have changed actually in their glass, and much more important to understand, the Alawite is not only about security and army generals. The Alawite, they have a huge contribution to the Syrian culture, to the Syrian society. A lot of big names in the Syrian culture, Sa'adallah Wannous, Mamdouh Udwan, and others. All the Alawite were actually more the Syrian. They have much respect to their contribution to the Syrian culture, to the Syrian society. This is why we don't see only the Alawite community as only some security or some army officers. And this is the huge difference we're trying actually to reach the Alawite community. This is why when I mentioned some names, and this is why I don't believe that the Alawite, they stuck with Iran at the end. They have different point of view to the role of Syria. They have point of view regarding that. And we have seen the letter of Adonis. Adonis, it's important, where Adonis himself, one of nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in literature, and he said exactly that Bashar al-Assad has to leave. The last question about the opposition. The opposition, it's clear that they are fragmented, but we have to understand that both regimes, the Egyptians and the Tunisian, both collapsed without having united opposition. It's not an easy to bring all the opposition figures united in few months. In Libya, different case where actually there is no opposition or civil society before. Those 31 appointed themselves and goes from there. But there actually a lot of in Syria you have the business class, some officials who defected from the Ba'ath Party. They should have a room. Other ideological different branches in the opposition. But much more importantly, that the opposition right now, they do have unified agenda. They know exactly what they want from the international community, and they know exactly what they want from the regime. This is why the regime in July 10th, when invited some opposition figures to attend the dialogue roundtable, none of the opposition attended, because they said, all of them, they said the dialogue, it's an important strategy to start the transition. But before that, there's certain conditions. Should be the army back to its places, not to invade and put siege on the cities, stop the killings, and thirdly, release all political prisoners. Before that, none of us will accept to go to have a dialogue with the regime.
Sama, you want to take on Iran?
Just wanted to answer Firaz's question on Iran's involvement. Yes, Turkey realizes that the battlefield in the Middle East with Iran is Syria. Saudi Arabia is quite concerned, and frankly, most of the recent shift in Saudi Arabia is due to the concerns of Iranian influence in the country. And yes, there is Iranian support. 2 shipments been seized in Turkey, 2 shipments in Egypt of arms, of tear gas, of riot and police equipment, and all of that. We also have reports of the Tehran chief of police been in the Ministry of Interior in Damascus several weeks on the planning of guerrilla wars and civic infighting and stuff. So they're quite heavily involved we need to realize and know that Iran, Iranian regime and Syrian regime, they have a joint committee in every ministry in Syria. Irrigation, transportation, communication. There's in every ministry a Syrian-Iranian joint committee on X and Y and Z. So they are quite involved. The big question is whether they give up Hezbollah to save Assad or give up Assad to save Hezbollah. That's a different discussion. Elise's question from CNN, does the US has a dog in this fight? It certainly does. It's a national security for the US. You have Iraq on one side. You have your troops only a few kilometers. Again, by articulating certain messages, imposing certain pressure, liaising with the regional powers, having the same agenda with the Saudis, Qataris, GCC, Arab League, and Turks, and this has already taken place, but perhaps slowly but surely, pressuring China and Russia in the Security Council to pass on a resolution referring Assad to ICC. All that work. You need a champion to lead that effort, and we hope that the US is continue leading these efforts internationally. On Tamam's question, whether we kill Ali Habib or not, I hope not. But again, as Radwan said, you need a strong establishment to keep the country together the day after Assad boarded a plane to Iran or somewhere or killed. So that's why we're calling upon the military. And perhaps one of the feasible scenarios being articulated, regardless of the probability of that scenario, is at a certain point, at a tipping point, where things reach a cliff. Top army generals will not, fall off the cliff with the Assad. They will perhaps arrest them or arrest the chiefs of the intelligence, Mamluk and Qudsiya and Makhlouf and those, and bring some of the Sunni business elite from Damascus and Aleppo and some of the tribal leaders in the eastern side of the country, and also bring on board some of the civil society and political, reputable, respected figures in Syria, all to form some kind of a transitional council or a national council that will lead to a certain stage until we have some kind of referendum on a constitution or political parties' law or a speed election. So that's one of the most probable scenarios when things reach a tipping point, which we hope will be soon.
Thank you. Ted, do you want to take Elise's question?
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. As I indicated, I think the administration's right to be cautious, should continue to be a bit cautious. There's, a regime like the Assad regime essentially wiped out civil society, wiped out independent groups, because they've always wanted to set up this dichotomy. It's either us or the Salafis, because the only place, as was mentioned, that people could meet were in mosques or churches and the like. Other places, it was illegal to have gatherings, significant gatherings and the like. So that's a game that a lot of regimes in the region have played, and it's left. Unfortunately, it has probably left Syria in a difficult situation where, when the regime goes, I'm not saying there'll be an absolute vacuum, but there's many strains within the opposition, I'm sure, as to what should be done and the like. So it's concerning. I myself think it would be good for the U.S. if Bashar al-Assad's regime falls. After all, the regime has done us no favors over the years. It would deal a blow to Iran and Hezbollah if Syria falls. It could conceivably give Lebanon some more breathing room. Conceivably, it's not guaranteed.